And I kid you not, I took about 3 or 4 steps away from that bench and my whole right arm just went, and I couldn't move it. It was dangling off of my upper arm. It was brutal. My elbow, I was convinced my elbow exploded. Like it was game over.
All right, I'm here with my good friend, Matt LaBosco. He is a best-selling author of his new book, Health to Vitality. He's a coach. He's a speaker. He's so much more than that. Matt, welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, it is such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you, Joel. I cannot wait to rap with you for the next hour or so.
Likewise, man. I'm super excited to get into all things, including your book. And, you know, we all have our like pain to purpose story of how we kind of got into health. Your book covers these 3 realms, I think, and we'll get into it, which is, you know, the mindset aspect, the nutrition aspect, and of course the physical therapy aspect. But you have quite an incredible story of going from some of the feats of strength to injuries and over 5 surgeries that you had and had to battle through it. And really the cool thing with you is like you saw all the specialists, you saw all the people, and they couldn't help you, and you really had to go on this journey yourself to figure it out. And I think after just reading your book, I think you're really onto something, and I'm excited for you to share that with the world. And a lot of that is in your new book, again, Health to Vitality. But yeah, brother, just kind of introduce yourself to the audience and let them know kind of how this all started for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It's been quite the journey. You know, when you said, you know, I've worked with a lot of different people. I don't think I wrote this in the book actually, but fun little fact for your audience. My wife and I have moved 18 times since we've been together. Yeah.
Okay, Matt, really quick. I just moved, for people that know, a lot of people that follow the podcast and know, I just moved about a year ago from California to Idaho. And, you know, hey, listen, everything worked out great, but I didn't realize until recently just kind of the stress effects for my kids and all of us. And they say moving is probably the most stressful thing that a mammal can do. You did it 18 times, so very good.
Yeah, I was on a mission, Joel, and that's why we moved as much as I was literally on a mission to get answers to questions I felt weren't very accessible. And
your wife is an amazing person, by the way.
My wife,
I want to give her a internet hug.
Yeah, man, she's an angel. But she's also, you know, there's some coherence and alignment with the vision. But yes, she is incredible to tolerate the constant changing and evolving of our journey together. I always joke around and say, after moving, I think it was 16 times at that point, I was actually able to get close enough to her to have 2 beautiful children. So that was the indication that, all right, things aren't as bad as they could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my journey started, you know, where a lot of people, I think it's a common place where you kind of have your own challenges, and mine were with the physical body. I was a 3-sport athlete as a kid, and played basketball, baseball, and soccer at, you know, relatively high levels. I wasn't going to be a pro anywhere, but you know, all state kind of stuff, close to scoring 1,000 points in high school basketball for a small little prep school. So, you know, it was competitive. It was super fun. And I was way into sports. It was my thing, man, you know, kept me out of trouble for the most part. But you know, my baseball career ended first because I had horrible elbow problems. You know, I played Little League, and, you know, if you can throw it over the plate, you pitched pretty much every day. And a buddy and mine, we literally pitched every other game for, I don't know, probably 3 to 5 years. And, you know, actually we never lost. And by the time we got to high school, neither one of us could throw a baseball anymore. So we peaked at like 10, you know?
Wow.
And my elbow was shot. And so I started my basketball career, and, you know, soccer was probably my best sport, but had elbow surgery my sophomore year of high school, and then knee surgery. That was actually after I graduated high school. But I had ankle and knee problems when I was playing basketball and soccer, and my ankle, was it my ankle or I think it was my ankle and my knee, that basically I was convinced by you know, to not play soccer my senior year and focus on basketball because we had just come off a state championship. And so we need you healthy for your senior year. Well, I limped my way through my senior year. Like I said, I was about 40 points shy of scoring 1,000 points in high school because I got injured with about a month left to go in the season, which was such a brutal way to end my athletic career.
Yeah.
I got recruited to play basketball at a small D3 school called Tufts in Medford, Massachusetts. Never saw the court. Always injured, the knee, the ankle. It was not fun. And the crazy thing about it was I grew up in the medical model. Like my dad is a doctor surgeon and my mom is a nurse practitioner. So I had direct access to the medical model, which, as you can imagine, Joel, for many reasons, has a lot of perks to it, right?
A lot of perks for those surgeries you needed. That's for sure.
Well, yes.
Hey, real quick, because I'm 40, and just kind of give context to how old you are, Matt.
44.
Yeah, so we're about the same age, and
For sure, man.
it's like when you look back at, and it just when you look back at, and we know sports rehab and stuff is so much different than it was when we were kids, and
Absolutely.
even in college, it's so much better. But I already know just from reading your book, there's still a huge gap in some of the things in the physical rehab world, and you bring that to light in the book. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, continue. This is great.
Yeah, no. And so I was kind of in a place of like, why is my body breaking down so fast? Why do I have my orthopedic number on speed dial? Like, why is he turning into my best friend? I'm pretty sure he had a boat called Matt at some point. I was there every summer, for something. And so I was like, all right, I gotta get my body strong. Like, I guess I'm weak, right? Like, I don't know how else to make sense of what's going on here. So I did I tend to be obsessive about things. So I just went all in kind of obsessively about learning strength, conditioning, went to like every strength and conditioning seminar, guru, back then, Charles Poliquin, rest in peace, Olympic strength coach that he was, Paul Chek, I call him the walking encyclopedia, like Ian, like there's just brilliant minds out there. Olympic weightlifting. I just got all the certifications, National Academy of Sports Medicine, National Strength and Conditioning Association. I mean, if there was somebody out there that was, an expert in the field, I took money I didn't have and invested it there. and I would travel and I wanted to learn. And so I took what these individuals were teaching and I implemented it and I got really strong. I mean, really strong. I'm not the biggest guy. I mean, I'm 4 out of 5 kids and my 2 brothers, I'm the runt of the family. My 2 brothers are 6'4" and 6'5". I'm 5'11", 6 foot on a good day, and so, they look at weights and they are like, whew, they look huge. I got to work for it. So, I went to the gym, man, and I worked and I did all the things and I got to a place where I was probably like 210, 215, 8% body fat, looked the part of fitness and health, and was moving around a lot of weight. And I would call it, and I'm putting it in quotes, the best shape of my life, in my early 20s. And I was working out with a buddy of mine, and we were doing military press, where you sit on the bench and you press weight over your head. And we were going for a PR that day. And I was feeling good, Joel. I was like, yeah, baby, I'm going to friggin' rock this thing. And had a lot of weight on there. In the book I share is 315 pounds. It's a lot of weight to press over your head from a seated position. And so I got my buddy there. He helps me unrack it. I get this thing up over my head, lock it out, rack it back up. And I literally said to myself, man, I've arrived. Like I finally have overcome all of these weaknesses. Like maybe I'm not broken after all. Thank God, And I kid you not, I took about 3 or 4 steps away from that bench and my whole right arm just went, and I couldn't move it. It was dangling off of my upper arm. It was brutal. My elbow, I was convinced my elbow exploded. Like it was game over. And, I was convinced I was going to need some surgery again on it. And I like I said, I'm not joking. I had my orthopedic surgery, Dr. Hosey, rest in peace. He's no longer with us, but was a good dude, was always ready for me to come in. And went to see him later that week and, went in there, you sit in that little room and you're waiting for them to tell you what's wrong with you and how they're going to fix you. Right. And so he does the assessment, x-rays, pokes around, all the things. And I'm literally like, okay, surgery next week. And when he walked into that little room, what he said to me in that moment, like, changed my life and put me on a trajectory that's landed me where I am today. Like, this is that moment, right? That transformational moment where the trajectory changed. And he came into the room, and I'm ready for him to tell me what's wrong with me and how we're going to fix it. And he said to me, he said, Matt, I don't see anything wrong with your elbow. And for whatever reason in that moment, Joel, it was like a 2x4, like wham, like, whoa, wait a minute here. Is it possible that they don't have all the answers? Is this conceivably possible? Right? Like, oh my God. Right. And it really occurred to me in that moment. It's like, God, how unfair is it of me to expect them to have all the answers with this infinitely complex system of ours that we know much less about than we know about. And how unfair is it to me that I demand them to give me an answer that will fix me, right? I don't know why that just like in that moment, like, God, that's crazy. My expectations right now are insane. But what I was really clear about in that moment was like, wow, they don't have the ability. There's a lot of holes in the system, right? And I lived the system, right? And I was doing PT, and I was strengthening this and strengthening that and stretching this and stretching that and all the things. And so this is when I went on I call it, I summoned my 5-year-old version of myself and literally asked why to every single question or everything anybody told me. I was like, why? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? Why are we strengthening this muscle and stretching this one? Why are we doing that? What does strength even mean? Like, I don't even understand what you mean by it's weak. How are we measuring weakness? I was the most annoying human in every seminar that I was a part of. Cause I was like, I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wipe the slate clear of everything I think is real. Like, just forget everything. Okay. And it started with the physical rehabilitation. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we rehabilitating shoulders by doing these external rotations with the shoulder? Why are we strengthening? Why is the core the problem when people have back pain? Why are we telling people to hold these positions to strengthen their core? Why are we telling people to keep their spine straight? Why do we hold everything rigid and isolate? Like, why are we doing this? Where did this all come from? And that had me go to, like, I want to get to the fundamentals, the foundation where all of these recommendations are built on, and start there. And that's where I discovered, or uncovered for me. I don't know if I discovered anything, but I uncovered that all of the recommendations that are made for being fit and rehabilitating people are based on cadaveric anatomy. And so what does that mean? A cadaver is a corpse, basically, right? And, if you've ever done a cadaveric dissection, it's quite fascinating. I've had the pleasure of doing it one time, which was amazing. I also have all these cadaveric videos. I think they're VHSs, actually. For those of you that don't know what a VHS is, right? The cadaveric anatomy is basically studying the anatomy of a dead person. So we look at.
I just want to cut you off, Matt.
Go for it.
A couple of things. One is, what I find fascinating is when you got hurt after this 315-pound lift. Again, people need to understand. Like, this is a well-versed guy. You throw out some big names: Poliquin, Czech. Anybody that goes to any of those guys, they're not your average strength and conditioning. They really see the body in a very different way, and you were very eclectic, and yet you still didn't have the answers. So I just find it so fascinating that you continued to ask why, and it's no surprise that the modern Western doc couldn't figure it out. I'm not surprised there. But what's also really neat now is, I think, and what you're going to go into and talk about is, hey, one of the biggest problems we see right now, and I think the general rehab model, even till today, even with everything we know, is that they're basing these recommendations based on cadavers and dead people, not the dynamic, functional, moving human being. So I can't wait for you to just kind of talk about how that model is not probably getting you anywhere. And I'll just speak really quick for me. Sure. You're talking my language, man. I went to very high level, I want to say, physical therapists, okay,
Yep.
ART practitioners, okay,
Hmm.
active release therapy guys.
I'm an
People,
ART
I paid
practitioner.
I paid out of pocket is what I'm saying. I didn't go
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
average doctor. They told me to do the same things, okay, and I was told I also have a weak glute medius, which is very common in many of us from probably from sitting all the time and having sleep amnesia, and that's why I'm having all this hip pain and everything. I did all the clam shows you want to know. I did all the external rotators, and I'm telling you right now, I'm still dealing with some of the same issues. So that's why I found your book so fascinating. I can't wait to kind of hear more about what we're going to learn about. This cadaver model is broken and what you discovered or uncovered.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so funny. One of the things that I always find so hilarious is the diagnosis of, oh, your problem is your glute medius is weak, and that was one of the things I'd be like, what does that mean, and how are we measuring it, right? And that's where the carryover of cadaveric anatomy to real live human functional movement. There's this huge gap because how a glute medius is measured is what you said, a clam, hold your leg up, push down, oh, you can't hold it, that muscle's weak. But it's like, how does that carry over to when you have back pain? Because the glute medius isn't doing that ever. Like, ever is the glute medius doing that in actual real life, only on a cadaver, only on an isolated, environment, like on a table. And so
But like
cadaver,
here, this is the way I understood it, and I'm wondering how you flip it on its head. Oh, someone tells me that, and I go, "Oh, okay, well that makes sense. The glute med's not activating, it's not turning on, it's not firing
mm-hmm.
because I'm not loaded properly. So because of the glute med's not firing correctly, my QL, the lower part of my back, is picking up the slack because the glute. That's the way I understood it. But you're saying no
Sure.
bullshit.
Well, it's hitting the bullseye on the wrong target, which is what I think the whole health model is doing right now. And so what I mean by that is, like, you just said a whole series of words right there. It's how the muscle loads. It's like, how does a muscle load? Right? Because the way the cadaveric model says is we have to shorten and contract it.
Mm.
But in actual real life, muscles load by lengthening, and they lengthen in 3 dimensions, and they can actually be loading in 3 different dimensions and shortening. A muscle can be loading and shortening at the same time in 3 different dimensions. So it's so much more infinitely complex then, and it's just like, oh, well, your glute medius isn't loading. What the hell does that mean? Like, it doesn't mean what we think it means. We're
Yes.
oversimplifying stuff. And so it's like, well, when someone has sciatica or back pain, the most important question to ask is, when do you have the discomfort? Is it when you bend over and pick something up? Is it when you reach back in your car? Is it when you go upstairs? Is it when you go downstairs? Is it when you get up off the floor? Because here's what I'll tell you about every single one of those movements. Your glute medius is doing something different in every single one of those positions. So how it's loading when you're on the floor versus walking versus climbing versus crawling is completely different. And so we have to understand, really, chain reaction biomechanics, which was not something I figured out. Okay. I did not discover chain reaction biomechanics. I found the people that were way smarter than me to learn from. And the people that I would credit their term, it's actually their term, is the Gray Institute, which I talk about in my book.
Were you? I'm just guessing you were at a seminar and you kept asking all these annoying questions, and finally somebody said, "Look, I don't know. Go ask these people." Is that how you eventually got to these people? That somebody just
Well,
kept saying, "Go ask him. Go ask
yeah.
him. Go ask that person." Yeah.
Well, most people just would give me answers that weren't answers.
Yeah.
And one of the answers I would get is, well, the studies show this.
You know what book blew my mind, Matt, was Anatomy Trains.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm
Thomas
like,
Myers.
I don't even know how to wrap. I still can't wrap my head. I mean, that book's over my head. I'm just like a small guy in the PT world, like doing my own self discovery. So I don't, you have all the certifications. I don't have all those. But one of the things I remember in that book that just blew my mind was that there's parts of your neck muscle that run a train of fibers or tendons. I don't even know what it would be, muscles all the way
Fascia
down to the
nerves.
heels of your feet.
Bottom of your feet.
You know,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
how can we say as a PT or whatever, oh, Joel, you have a foot problem. Yeah, it's clearly because you're not loading properly. It could be my neck could be causing the pain in
Exactly,
the butt.
man.
When I learned that, I was just like, I give up. I throw my hands up. I don't know what to believe anymore.
Exactly, man. Yeah, Thomas Myers did definitely create that influence with his book, because he's like, wait, we're like connected through the entire chain here, right? Which is like so important to appreciate, that we don't work. The analogy that I use is like, it's like an orchestra, right? Like if you were a conductor of an orchestra and you want this orchestra to play beautiful music together, the last thing you'd want to do is take every instrument and isolate it and get it to scream. Bicep curls, leg curls, chest press. Like, it's like taking every instrument in the orchestra and getting it to play really loud and strong, and then bringing them together and expect them to make music through movement. It doesn't work, because we're basically teaching them to speak English and then asking them to speak Russian. There's no correlation there. And this is why there's so much dysfunction, out there in the fitness, and why I feel like a lot of the rehabilitation can be a temporary fix. But when the rehab doesn't work, then we'll give you a shot. If the shot doesn't work, then we'll give you this Medrol pack or whatever. And if that doesn't work, we'll do surgery.
Yep.
And it's like the inevitable outcome.
Yeah. So ask me this. So I'm curious for you. Then how do you work out today? 44 years, obviously knowing all of this. How do you think about working out? Do you think about like the CrossFit model, which is kind of like the functional medicine? Not functional. I'm sorry, functional. It's more functional movement. But there's a lot of isolation there with, you're doing those heavy 5x5 squats and things like that. And so how do you think about, for the average person that just wants to be healthy, like me, I want to grow old, be strong, be healthy and pain-free?
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually going to be releasing an app in January, which is a program to help people, basically execute on this, because the way that and again, I do write about this in the book a little bit. I don't know if you remember that part with the foundational movements. The more solid those and foundational movements are, the better you're going to get away with playing in the spaces of sports and activities and crossfitting. And it's nothing wrong with that stuff necessarily, but you just have to understand that it's a want, not a need. The body has needs. It needs to be able to lunge, squat, push, pull. Now I say those words, but I got to be careful, because there's an exercise equivalent to every word I just said.
Right.
So when I say squatting, I'm not talking about, bar on the back or front squats where the spine is straight and the knees don't go over the toes and all of the rules. I talk about in the book, it's called a movement squat, which is basically looks like you're bending over and picking something up. It's
I saw this and I'm like,
body.
I was like, I can't wait to ask you, because I'm looking at the book and I'm like, people don't know. I'm not going to do that exercise. Like, I'm not going to exercise that movement. But again, here's my brain going, you're an idiot. Like, you don't need, we're creating the movement. You're exercising the movement, not some like, high load, high velocity, or it's like, no, we're practicing.
But you can turn it into that.
Okay.
Those are variables. Like, I have people do that movement squat with like 30-pound dumbbells in their hands.
Awesome.
Like that, like you're going to build strength, but you're just going to build strength in the way the body was designed to work. Like, when the hip flexes, the spine's supposed to flex. Like, that's the way it's designed. But we've created these rules like, oh, don't flex your spine. Don't flex your spine. Oh, God, don't flex your spine. And then we lock it into this extended position. We put a load on it, and we wonder why everyone's got back problems. It's like, yeah, that doesn't make, it's not the way the system was designed to work. So lunging, squatting, like the big difference between, I would say, an exercise lunge and an exercise squat is the position of the spine. I have rehabbed more backs by just teaching people how to do the movement squat and the movement lunge than anything else. Like, I've literally not touched people, just taught them how their spine works their hips, and how when the hip flexes, the spine has to flex, and when the hip extends, the spine can extend. Period, end of story. And teaching people that that's how the system was designed to work. So when you have those foundational movements and you integrate movement like pressing and pushing, a lot of the pressing and pushing motions that are in exercise land isolate the glenohumeral joint. The only thing that's moving is the glenohumeral joint. Well, again, the system would never choose to isolate a muscle and get it to do all the work. It just doesn't make any sense. Anytime you do a push and pull, you want the trunk to be rotated. You want the rib cage to be moving. You want the shoulder blades to be moving. And in the best case scenario, you're integrating hip motion into that. The more, I have a saying, leave no body part behind. Integrate everybody, get everybody involved in the movement as much as possible in a way that the body is responding to a task. We're not squeezing this, holding that, don't move this, don't move that, freeze this. It's like doing in Vogue, right? It's like, no, like just move the system. The body was designed to react to conscious tasks. So if I go down and pick this thing up, the system responds to the conscious task. And so when you create a series of tasks, movements, if you want to call them that allow the system to do what it's designed to do, you create this strong foundation that you can now build on. And you can get away with doing muscle ups and some of the more exercise stuff, which I enjoy doing. It's not like those things are off my workout routine, but I call it my Power 3D program, which is the power regions, so I think we're going to chat about. Like, I make sure those bad boys are strong and solid, because when I do that 3 days a week, I can get away with all the other stuff.
Okay. I can't wait. Okay. I can't wait for the app, because I would love to have some kind of, I'm a big, and I think we all are, that we're consistent when we have a program and we just follow the program. And I can't wait, especially as I get older. I want to make sure I like to push weights and do some high intensity stuff. I think I'm just,
it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And I enjoy that. But if I can also have the programming, like you said, to bring back the movement and activate all those chains, I'm going to be so much more resilient.
This app is really designed, or the workout that I'm putting together is for people basically 40 and older, and we love working out. We love the sweat. We love like just being fit, but we got the shoulder and we got the knee and the freaking this. It's just like, oh, this shit keeps getting in the way. Like how do and I'm doing the cryo and I'm trying to do more yoga to stay flat. Like we're putting in the effort to try to make it all work. Right. And it's just like, damn it, And so it's literally the goal of putting this program together is to make the next 10 years my most active years.
I love it.
My most fit years. So how do I create this solid foundation that I can be active for the next 10 years? Right. That's where I think our generation is right now, Joel, is we love being fit. We love exercising. We love sweating. But man, we just don't get away with this stuff anymore at 40 that we did at 20. Period.
But even as we're talking about this, Matt, I mean, look at these power regions. Everybody, a high schooler, my boys need this. I have a 9-year-old, soon to be 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and it's not that he moves beautifully as a young kid, but he is going to fall into the systems that are still archaic, right? He is going to go to gyms. He's going to be playing football, let's say, and they're going to say what? Squat, deadlift, bench press. Yeah, it's going to be the same systems, and we're going to create that. And I think your app, I mean, it's a movement app, which is what is so great about it. It's where you're teaching the principles of creating those chains and movements. Everybody needs that. And so, I mean, it's going to be, it's for everybody. But I know what you mean. It's definitely for us older guys. It's going to be great.
No, it's a great point, because I worked with a lot of athletes at our clinic in LA, and the biggest challenge we had was, and these are D1 athletes, and even, football players at USC, and high profile guys that played hockey for the Ducks. Like, we worked with some high profile athletes, and a lot of them, we knew that we're not going to override, the strength coach of whoever. Right. And so it's like, all right, just make sure that you do these things and that these things are solid, and you'll be able to get away with this stuff. Right. And so it's all about creating that solid foundation so you can tolerate a little bit more region or muscle specific type exercises.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what you just mentioned, and kind of that whole the power region protocol that you're talking. You have this 4-phase process, and really how we should be thinking about rehabbing or creating the lifestyle that we just talked about.
Yeah. So the power regions there are three areas of the body that I call the power regions, and they're the areas of the body where we get the most amount of gross rotation. Okay, and so why is that significant? Why is that important? Every muscle in your body biases rotation because of how we orient to gravity and ground reaction forces. So we've got gravity, this force that comes straight down, and we've got the ground reaction force. So ground reaction force is the thing you feel like when you jump out of a tree, it's kind of fun, but when you hit the ground, it's not so fun because there's this force that comes back up, right? That's the ground reaction force. So every time you walk, there's like, this little force that comes back up through the system. And so the way the system evolved is muscles orient to this rotational plane because it doesn't oppose those two forces. Like if you were to stand and just rotate your body side to side, gravity doesn't oppose that. But if you lift your arm up straight in front of you, gravity's pushing you down. Like eventually you'll get tired.
Yeah.
If you put it to the side of you, gravity's there. So the system, the body biases itself because it's always looking to find the path of least resistance. So the rotational plane is the path of least resistance. And so the system actually loads, to get back to loading, right? It loads most efficiently in the transverse plane. Okay. That's what the power regions do. And so the three areas of the body where we get the gross rotation for that really sets up the whole chain to work at an optimal level is the foot and ankle. Incredibly complex joint, 27 bones down there, and has the ability to torque, to convert forces. It's a torque converter. When your foot enters the ground, it becomes a shock absorber, and then it has to lock up so you have some stable platform to push off of. Wickedly dynamic and complex area. Foot and ankle, first power region. Hip complex, second power region, because it's a ball and socket joint, right? Like ball and socket means it spins, baby, right? And so when those hips are able to spin, like I call the hip region the 500 horsepower engine. It's where our power comes from. The biggest muscles in the body cross that region. And then the third area is your thoracic spine, which is basically your mid to upper back. And the reason why that's a power region is because, again, if you were to look at the way the vertebral bodies of the thoracic spine are versus the lumbar spine, I got pictures in my book that show this. The thoracic spine is able to spin based on its structure. The lumbar spine isn't able to rotate as much because they have something called facet joints, right? This is something that you'll hear out there. And facet joints actually are made to bear more load straight down and is better at going forward and back and really good at going side to side, but they're really not that great at rotating. Thoracic spine structure is different, and that's what gives us the ability to spin. Like your thoracic spine is what allows you to reach back in your car theoretically and grab the cup off the ground, that you can't find or whatever.
And swat your kid.
That's your thoracic spine. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha.
And what's so interesting about this, Joel, was like I was discovering this, you think about the foot and ankle, you think about the hips, and you think about the upper back. If you notice that the areas in between those areas are some of the most commonly injured areas. You got the knee between the foot and the hip. It's a hinge joint. Hinge joints are terrible at what? Rotating.
Yeah. That's
why it's surrounded by these two incredibly powerful rotating joints, right? Lumbar spine, same thing. The lumbar spine pain, back pain is an epidemic in our reality.
I see. And I was even going to ask you, Matt, why are there so many L4, L5 surgeries? Every time someone's like, I have this surgery, I'm like, let me guess, L4, L5. How do you know? I'm like, that's all I ever hear about. Yeah.
The reason why, Joel, is because L4, L5 is one of the areas of the lumbar spine that can rotate the most. Okay, but if you look at the gross rotation of L1 through L5, you're talking about 13 to 14 degrees. You can't even see that with the naked eye. So if you summated the rotational ability of your entire lumbar spine, it's somewhere between 13 and 16 degrees, depending on which book you pick up. Basically, moral of the story, that sucker's not designed to rotate, okay? That's why it lives on a ball and socket joint. Okay, and it has this incredible thoracic spine that has the ability to rotate right above it. right? And so when the when you shut down the thoracic spine and the hips, by the way, there's one common position that does that. Guess which one that is?
Sitting.
Sitting.
Yeah.
Exactly. As soon as you sit, your feet are off, your hips are stuck in flexion, and your thoracic spine's flexed. So your ability to rotate those areas are gone, right? And so now the lumbar spine is being asked to rotate more than it was designed. L4, L5, you get a lot of rotation there. So he's the one that's like, all right, I guess it's on me, man. That's why it's herniates. That's why you got the disc slit and all this stuff. And it's like, but it's not the problem.
Right.
That's not what, you know what I mean? So we go in there and we brace the spine, we do the core crunches, and which crunching just puts you more into that posture we're trying to stay out of. We're doing this bracing, right? It's like, what are we doing?
I never thought about that. I don't ever do crunches anymore, but I couldn't, I never thought about it until I read your book and you said, why are we telling people to do crunches? We're telling them not to be hunched over. That is the exact position you're creating in the crunch. I'm like, oh yeah. I stopped doing it just years ago because I remember I never heard it that way, but I just was like, I just heard it's not an exercise that is going to really create abdominal contraction the way you think. So I just was like, that's a waste of time for me.
Well, and again, like there's really no time in life that the body would choose to flex the spine in that way. Like even if you laid 100, if you laid 100 people on their back and asked them to get up, none of them, unless they were trained in exercise land, would come up directly against gravity and do a crunch. How would everybody get up? They would roll to their side.
They would rotate. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because that's more efficient. The system knows what it's doing. Like I used to sell to people in my clinic, like just get out of the way of the body. It knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Go ahead.
No, amazing. I don't even know where to go now from here. We're talking about the three power. Okay, so that I think we covered that, and talk briefly just about, because we haven't even talked, and I knew this was going to happen. We talked about this. I knew we haven't even talked about the trilogy of vitality, which you talk about in the book, and that we'll talk a little bit about mindset and nutrition. But just before we go there, I want to just talk briefly about how you think then. How should we be rehabbing? We've talked about what the problem is with the current model still to today. And we've actually now explored some of the reasons how people should work out. How should they, let's say they do get injured, how should they be thinking about rehab, or how did you come up with this process, I guess, and why is it working so well? You've got some great testimonials and one of them we can even talk about a woman coming to you and said, I'm supposed to have surgery tomorrow, but they said, go see you first. So, but yeah, kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at injury prevention, rehabilitation, or performance enhancement. To me, they're all the same. So there's not like do this for injury prevention, do this for sports performance, and do this to rehab yourself. The name of the game is improving the body's abilities, efficiency to move and integrate properly and share the load through the system. That's the goal, period. So whether I am, and here's the cool thing I used to say to my athletes that would come in for injury prevention. I said, here's the good news. The stuff we're going to do to rehab you is also going to help prevent injury, and it will also improve your performance. And if you just think about it, right? Like I'll give you a couple examples of volleyball players I've worked with that had like rotator cuff, posterior tendonite, like all the different impingement syndromes, blah, blah, blah. And, one kid I'm thinking of right now, he came in, he was a D1 volleyball player, and he was their big guy. I can't remember what they call him, but he was the guy that was with all the kills, right? So he's whipping that arm and crushing stuff, and and he's big dude, right? The force and torque that's going through this kid's shoulders very high, and he went to all the standard places, and he's a righty. And the thing that was creating the impingement had nothing to do with his shoulder. Okay. It was his left hip's inability to extend properly. And so think of it this way. Here's the best way I can tell you. If you have kids, and you do, Joel, right? When you're going to reach for something up in a cabinet and your 5-year-old pulls on your shirt and they're pulling on your shirt down and you're reaching up, like what happens?
I'm thinking immediately, I start to come forward. My thoracic is like, if anybody's watching a video, I start to like cave down. I start to crumble. Yeah.
And what happens in the shoulder?
It dips. It starts to
it wants to dip, right? But where are you going?
I'm going
up,
down.
but your arm's going up because you want to reach for something.
Yeah.
So you've got the bottom of the body going forward and the top of the body going that way. That's an impingement.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is the way to piss off the front of your shoulder. You see what I'm saying? Now, is that the shoulder's fault? Is that because you have a weak rotator cuff? No, it has nothing to do with it. It's because in this particular case, this gentleman's hip couldn't extend. So it was like he had a force that was causing his trunk to flex, because the hip's a powerful region. So this is the problem with kids in school that play sports. They sit for 8 hours a day and then go play sports, and they're not being, whatever. Yeah. And so the hip doesn't extend. He can't get his rib cage up off of his pelvis to set the shoulder up for success here, right? Get the shoulder blade to drop, get the thoracic spine to extend. So because two of his power regions were not participating, his poor little rotator cuff, a 20 horsepower engine at best, is being asked to produce 200-300 horsepower. The crazy thing about these athletes is somehow his shoulder was able to put out that power. But it's also not a mystery why it's tapping out.
Yeah.
And so we literally cleaned up that chain, got his hip extending, taught him how to get his rib cage off his spine, get his thoracic spine, and yes, it helped his shoulder pain, but what did it also do? He was hitting the ball harder. Of course, because he's just recruited the big boys, yeah. Right? And now his little rotator cuff isn't doing all the work, right? And so I just thought that was a good example of how it's all the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
I love it. And you go to the traditional PT and they're going to give you those typical band extras for the shoulder. It's not turning on. This is the reason. And really the other chains, the hips are broken, right? And that's the chain we want to turn on. You turn that on, guess what? The shoulder starts working better. So it's such a great story. I can't wait to talk to you afterwards. I need some help, brother. I got that shoulder impingement I have on my left side. I have like a little of a cross syndrome going, and I'm actually curious. When I even say cross syndrome, do you just like laugh and you're like, Tish, like no, that's an old ideology? But I have the anterior. I do have that pelvic tilt, and being a first responder in the past, a police officer, I sat for many, many hours, and I think that's what actually did me in. And then, the great Kelly Starrett, I actually had a chance to visit, and he even said, he's like, you're a tactical athlete, Joel. You're expected, what you said is you sit down for hours, and then in a moment's notice, you're supposed to get out of that car and sprint. And, you just had a lot of chains broken and stuff, but I can't wait. Yeah. I can't wait to talk with you more offline and even get the app, because I definitely,
and that's why if people like, if law enforcement and firemen, they knew how to keep their power regions, runways clear, foot and ankle, hips, and T-spine, if they were inside of a practice that kept those areas available, then they're not going to beat their back to shit and their neck and their shoulder, because they're keeping the runways clear. I call it clear the runway before you take off.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay. This is amazing. All right, let's jump in because we just spent 40 minutes talking about the body, which, who knows? I'll have to bring you back maybe for part 2. But let's talk about a little bit about, because this is just one aspect. And but again, you can see, I'm so happy that you went into such a deep richness and depth into this, because we're missing the boat, clearly. And here's even a guy like me, like, I know a little bit to be dangerous, but even I'm making mistakes. And so I think all of us are, and we've all been fed it's an old system. We're all following these systems, and it's just not serving us and getting us better. And so how does that lead into nutrition? Because I'm sure there's some things you'd like to talk about nutrition, that part of this vitality circle is the mindset, the nutrition, and the physical. But I'm sure there's some big myths and big things that we're missing. And what are some of those things when you just think about nutrition overall?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to share that, I mean, I did the same thing with nutrition and just really systemic health. Like I just challenged all of the accepted truths, right? Like, why is eating salad healthy again? Like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't understand it. Like,
okay, so are we carnivore, Matt? What's the answer? And I gotta ask you. You know why? Because I was just at the A4M conference, which is a regenerative medicine conference, just last weekend, and I was talking to some pretty high up doctors. who I really respect. These guys are cutting edge. They're always doing some things. And even they're leaning now towards the carnivore. And I understand the research about how plants are toxins. I totally get it. But I'm still not convinced carnivore is the way we were designed and meant to eat. So I'm just from one period to that. I'm just really curious
Yeah.
your
I,
thoughts, you know.
my,
I'm not
my
saying salads are the answer either, but
Yeah,
just,
yeah. No, I know exactly what you're saying, man, and I appreciate your question. Here's my general rule of thumb: is keep it simple, and I think there's a tendency to.
I was hoping you were going to say keto is the answer.
Overcomplicate. What was that?
I said I was hoping you were going to say keto is the answer, actually, Joel.
Yeah,
Just
no,
kidding.
I feel like I feel like because we live in a society that, there's a lot of competition for attention and marketing and niches and, you know what I mean? It's just the world we live in, you know what I mean? And I think these diets and these approaches, they come and go, man. I mean, they just do. And there's and all the research behind Atkins and all the research about the South. I mean, I just don't think it's that complicated. I really don't. I think it's quite simple. And to answer your question, I do think we're omnivorous. And I think when you look at just tradition and humans on the planet, we're eating a little bit of everything, but we definitely ate meat. We didn't just exclusively eat meat. We're not really carnivorous in that way. As like when you look at a carnivore animal, my book, I always say, before you read my chapter on nutrition, I have a big warning, caution. I'm about to talk about food because I know it's such an intensely emotional subject. And the people that we learned from, and actually our mentor, who we learned a lot of this from, actually just passed away on this past Thanksgiving. And he was really an extraordinary gentleman and was my wife and my mentor, and really taught us a lot of the foundations of nutrition, the nutrition program. And I talk about him in the book. His name is Dr. Ray Pete. But it's diving into why do we need to eat to begin with? And so right out of the gates, again, what are all the recommendations based on? Well, I'm eating this. Why? Because I need to lose weight. Okay. I'm eating this. Why? Oh, because I need to lower my cholesterol. It's like, wait a minute. The purpose of eating is not to lose weight, and it's not to lower your freaking A1C or whatever else you're stupid. I'm sorry. That's not the purpose of food. So I don't want to talk about what to eat to, lose weight. Like, and I'm not saying that, addressing people that are overweight isn't something that, like, if someone's overweight, that's not a healthy thing, so on and so forth. And yes, it would be better if they didn't have excess weight on them. But the purpose of food is not to get someone's scale to look better or their blood work to look better.
Love it.
Right. And so it's like, all right, if that's what we're basing, like you get to the point where healthy food somehow became no low calorie, no sugar, no salt, no fat, right? Like, what the hell is it then? If it has no calories, what are we doing here? Right? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Right. And so the gentleman that we learned from, all he talked about is what are the things that optimize cellular energy production, and get the body in the best position to recover and regenerate. And what I was found so refreshing about what he said is the most fundamental, basic stuff. It wasn't anything sexy and fancy. It was like, yeah, you should probably eat mostly fruit for your carbs. Eat the whole animal. Stay away from above the ground type vegetables. More tubers. They have less, anti-nutrient type stuff because they don't have to protect. Like, it was just like real basic, simple stuff that I was like, oh my God, this is so simple. And so we tried it. And my wife, her story's in the book. I mean, it was not great what was happening for her systemically. I mean, she was she was fit as all can be. We both were. We looked the part, but inside,
like you said, 8%
we were
body
dying.
fat. I mean, you're rocking it.
And she looked amazing, man. Like, she could have been a fitness model, but she was dying inside. right? I mean, urinary tract infections, all kind of menstrual problems, all kind of hormonal issues. And oh, by the way, this is why my dad wasn't super useful to me, because he was an OBGYN. Um, but like I got you, girl. Like my dad's an OBGYN.
Yeah.
We'll
We got the
and
medication.
again, yeah. But the only answer was tweak the pill, tweak this medicine, tweak the pill, medicine. And I feel so bad for women, because what are we doing now? We're basically getting them to stop having periods.
Yeah.
Again, we're just continually go against our nature, which I just can't make sense of. But anyway, for another show, Joel, right? And so it was, so we, and I am skeptical as all can be. And I said, all right, man, like I've got the perfect case study here. Cause not only if I got my stuff, but my wife is in shambles right now. She's got cysts. She's got all this menstruation. Like I am convinced that if we continued on the medical model path, they would have started removing parts from her.
Yeah,
There's no question about
it. And by the way, when you say that, at the time, like her diet prior to you doing this, was it the kid
perfect?
Was it the typical like
It was
calories in,
perfect.
calories? I mean, what were you
No,
really?
it was
How were you focusing on it before when she's suffering, and then what did you guys
the
migrate
I
to?
would yeah, great question. I would say the classic fitness diet.
Egg
Lean
whites
meat,
or
vegetables. You know what I mean? Like vegetables, lean meat. It's like your classic bodybuilding type diet, because if you want to
but it
look a
was whole
certain
food.
way,
I mean, so it's
yeah,
actually yeah,
it
yeah.
was, but she was vegetarian.
Mm,
Okay,
okay.
and I know this is a very very sensitive subject.
Not for me, it's not. But yeah.
Okay, great, but I'm just saying. I mean,
Yeah, I know
I
what you
just
mean. I
tread,
know what you mean.
I tread lightly
You know,
because I
you know
don't.
what the one thing, Matt, I will say, and what I've learned over my experience too, is just never to be so dogmatic about things and be like the moment I personally feel, and again, I don't care what anybody else does. You do whatever makes you happy, and you feel if you're
Exactly.
thriving, just keep doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But in my experience, anyways, and what I've seen just across the board is anytime someone says I'm keto, I'm carnivore, I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan, you now just limited yourself the possibility of doing anything else. And I usually just see inadequacies start to arise over time.
Yes.
And
It's
so,
not sustainable.
yeah,
I don't think. And again, how did the humans like do? How did we survive without keto? You know what I mean? How did we survive without these systems and all like, you know what I mean? Like just we got to. To me, when things get complicated, I got to get to 50,000 feet, because
yeah,
you get lost in the parts, right? So anyway, they had us literally execute on some of these things, eliminated, like I said in the book, if there's one thing that I've seen have the greatest impact on somebody's vitality, is eliminating any type of food, whether it's whole foods or processed foods, that have high amounts of polyunsaturated fats. I have seen clinically and with myself and so many clients that when we eliminate
give some
those type
examples
of,
for anybody that is listening doesn't know what a polyunsaturated. Give
yeah,
some
so
typicals.
polyunsaturated fats are mostly the oils, vegetable oils, canola oil, soybean oil, flaxseed oil, like
Cottonseed, yeah,
fish oils, all of these things
grapeseed,
that
yep.
that are touted. I mean, some of them touted as, I mean, the USDA pyramid literally says vegetable oils better than butter. I mean,
Yeah.
which, I mean, you've got to be kidding. Like, my
Hey,
brain wants to implode when I
I
see stuff
agree,
like that.
and we've look at the last 2 years, safe and effective, right? Just safe and
Oh my
effective. That's
God.
it. They're allowed to. I mean, it's a lot of marketing, and then you look at a lot of the money that goes behind it, as you know, and
Well, fish oil industry is $1 billion industry.
yeah,
I mean, we can't just be that ignorant to think that doesn't have that's not significant. I'm sorry, I just can't get there.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that omega 3s and 6s and 9s don't play a role, but if you're eating the whole animal, you're going to get all that stuff. It's in there.
yeah.
A healthy animal, you're going to get all of that stuff. The liver and eating the organ meats, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I mean by polyunsaturated fats.
Beautiful,
And
yeah.
honestly, beans, legumes, like those are all the kinds of things that we recommend people if they're struggling with their health, like eliminate all that stuff.
Eliminate beans and legumes too?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, what's your
Yeah.
reasoning on that?
A couple reasons. One, they're very difficult to digest. I put them in the category
But
of
Matt, they're
survival
good
food.
fiber.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We come up with cute songs for beans because beans, a musical
Yes.
fruit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's a reason why that's happening. It's hard to digest. But I put those in the categories of survival foods. Like those, you can feed entire nations with beans and rice,
Yeah.
right? You can feed entire nations with grains. That's why, I mean, 80% of the world, I think, is living off grains. Like, I think 80% of the food supply is grains, and that's what feeds 80% of the population. Or I'm sorry, it's in my book. I might be getting the statistic wrong. But it's crazy, right? But it's cheap and it keeps people alive.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not going to get you to thrive. I haven't seen it create thriving. All right. And so when we move people to, and what's easier to produce and keep on the shelf, beans, rice, nuts, or fresh fruit. Very hard to supply masses of people with good, whole, nutritious fruits. It's much more complicated.
Yeah.
Right. And so the reality of it is, if I'm the government and I'm responsible for feeding billions of people, let's subsidize corn, soy, wheat, and beans, because at least everyone will be alive, and byproduct of that is it'll keep our economy booming, especially the medical and pharmaceutical industries.
Yeah. Okay, so polyunsaturated fats, and we've got and then legumes such as beans, and I'm thinking of those other legumes that I can beans and legumes. Anything else that you'd say like just take that out, or those are like probably the top two?
Those are probably the biggest ones. I would say. I also would a
Like
lot of.
if people just do those two things, they're gonna get some great results.
I do believe that. And the only
Yeah.
other thing I would say is a lot of greens and roughage.
Okay, you would take that out as well.
I would limit that at the very least.
The thought process behind the salad, let's just say salad, right? Lettuce, greens, is just the anti-nutrients in them. Is that what
Well,
you're kind of
again,
thinking?
like,
The plant toxins that are getting released to.
yeah, I mean, sure, but here's another question I ask: is why salads? What's the benefit?
Um, there's nothing really in salad in terms of
Exactly. There's
caloric.
no calories.
It's if anything, it's maybe a little bit of fiber, some cellulose. I don't know.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what the reason why I believe that it's healthy is because it fills you up, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of calories, so that's
Yeah.
good.
That is good.
So I feel
Arugula
full.
now I could make the argument there's some good nitrates, I think, like as a production
Well,
of NO.
again,
But it's not. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not like
I'm not saying that there's not like vitamins in kale, because there is.
yeah, and I don't eat I don't eat kale ever. So
But you can get those vitamins in other foods that don't have these other things wrapped in things that aren't really healthy. And again,
Yeah.
cellulose is very difficult to digest.
right.
Like we're not herbivores. Herbivores have multiple stomachs. We
Right.
don't. And what's so fascinating about herbivores too is they can convert unsaturated fats to saturated fats. We can't. Because unsaturated fats are more unstable. Anyway.
All right. We don't have much time left, and I want to get a little bit into the part about mindset, and then I'd like to wrap up with some lightning round questions. And so, just really quick though, before we even go there, I'm just curious: was there any research that you came across when you were writing the book, or anything like that just surprised you when you were writing the book? And you're like, wow.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we didn't really get into how I even started writing this book, but I would say over the last year, some of the stuff that's been mind-blowing to me was some of the stuff in the personal development space, and actually some of the research on stress. I'm not going to go into this with you right now, but we can maybe in the future. But I was deeply involved with a personal development organization for about 8 years, and did all of the kind of traditional personal development stuff, and was taught a certain way of how to orient to emotions and stress and avoiding it, mitigating and quieting your emotions and letting things go and all that stuff. And there were so many things about that experience that were super helpful. But what I noticed it was doing to me was I was getting more disconnected to myself. And I felt like I was at war with myself in certain ways where like, oh, the stress response is on. I got to turn it off. Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. How do I turn it off? Oh, this is happening. How do I turn it off? Oh, I need to breathe. I need to let it go. I need to do this. Oh, I got to do this. It's like, it never ended.
Yeah.
And so the research that I like was just so, I was so happy to get back involved because I was actually a psychology major in college and was fascinated by neuroscience, but this personal development organization I was involved with, they kind of kept you in their world.
Yeah.
And so when I broke free, it was really like breaking out of prison. Like I got back into the things I was involved with, and I came across Aaliyah Crumb's work from Stanford. She's in the neuroscience department at Stanford. And she and her crew came up with the stress mindsets theory. And this was the thing that was like changed the game for me. As a matter of fact, I like apologized to former clients. I'm like, I am sorry that I have taught you how to deal with stress this way.
Take a deep breath.
I've been telling you the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And the stress mindset theories basically point out that what they showed was stress. We all know that stress can have a negative effect on your health. It can have a negative effect on your performance, and it can have a negative effect on your well-being. I mean, I don't think I have to convince anybody of that. I think we all agree. We don't need studies to prove that, right? But what they also pointed out was stress also increases performance, increases your immune system, makes you more resilient, and it increases well-being. So wait a minute. What's going on here?
Yeah.
What makes one thing happen versus the other? And what they discovered, which I just was a game changer for me, and it really correlated with all the emotional research I was doing, is people that orient to stress as an asset and something that's there to help them, they don't have any of the negative health effects. People that orient to the stress response as bad, I have to get rid of it. I need to mitigate it. I need to eliminate it. They're not integrating the communication necessarily. Those are the people that they're finding have the constricted vessels. I mean, they literally tied it to arterial wall, destruction, right? And the only thing that was different was their mindset. And guess which individuals they saw really embraced the stress and had no help.
Police officers, first responders, military, tactical athletes. Yeah.
You got it, bro. It's specifically, I think the studies were done on special forces guys.
Special forces. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just listening to you, Matt, and I love what you're saying, brother, because this is so refreshing. And, even as an officer for almost 15 years, I just think about the many times I didn't sleep, was running on 3 hours of sleep or whatever, and just odd shift hours. Like, how did I do that? Now, of course, we know, listen, I would never I always talk, I work with a lot of first responders, and then they're working night shifts. I'm like, you got to get off that shift. It's killing you. They're like, what? I'm like, it's causing cancer. Like, just get off of it. And, but like at the same token, right? Like, and a lot of officers, SWAT officers, and those guys, they can thrive on that adrenaline. But I think it's your orientation to it, right? It is how you perceive it. But over time, I do think that can wear on somebody. But I agree with you. I love what you're saying.
Have to. There's always space for recovery. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're orienting, because when you think about the stress response, you think of what it is. The body is mobilizing resources to help you overcome something that is meaningful to you. Meaning, like, this thing is here. We're going to support you to address the situation. So it upregulates energy. It upregulates the resources to be in high action. Stress literally has you, they call it the straw focus. You're able to see details you've never seen before.
Yes.
Like you have like a superpower. Now, there needs to be the recovery of that, because you just, we'll just say emptied your savings account.
Big time.
Right? And so there has to be a process of replenishing the resources, which can be overlooked and over time can have negative effects. But the thing about stress, and this is, I will share with your audience one way that will guarantee they'll never be stressed again. You ready?
This. Yes.
Okay. Because there is one requirement to be stressed. One. There's one thing that's always there when you're stressed. And I'll ask you this, Joel. Were you stressed out about Portugal playing against, in the World Cup game when they lost?
Didn't even know they were playing. I got stressed out thinking about how I was going to interview a guy like you on the show. I'm just kidding.
Great.
No, I'm just kidding.
But think, what's the difference? Like, why?
No awareness. I have absolutely no awareness of this.
Okay, so let's say, hey, there's a World Cup game today. Argentina's playing. I forget who they're playing, but they're playing today. Are you worried about that they're going to lose?
Could care less. I have no money in the game.
You just named the requirement to be stressed. Care. If you don't care, you won't be stressed. So the requirement to stress is caring. So when you're stressed out about something, what that's telling you is you care about it. You care.
Yeah. No, this is
you
huge.
Follow?
Now here's another thing. Now guess what? I'm thinking the flip side, because my wife will say, Joel, you're like, sometimes like you just so like relax about it. And I there's situations where it's like, yeah, like I guess I don't care. I just don't put the emotion behind it. But she might argue, and you're going to hear listeners say this, but Matt, or like Joel, what if my wife wants me to care about something? Or you should be caring about one of these issues. This is about our family. This is about our I have no idea. But like, what about something like that could also obviously go to this extreme of it, right?
Well, I'm not here to tell the people that they should stop caring.
Right.
No, because that's my point is that's not even realistic. The only way you can get to a point to stop caring is you have to disconnect from the communication system. You have to disconnect from caring. Now, in some circles, and I would even say in some of the spirituality communities, they call this being unattached.
I was just thinking when you were saying this, Jocko Willink, the famous Navy SEAL, he talks about in battle, he was taught, or they were taught, to detach. Yes. Take a step back. Let's get a global view of really what's going on. But when you're emotionally attached, you don't make good decisions. So I love what you're saying.
Well, yeah, and there's a need for disconnection. And if you're a Navy SEAL in Fallujah, like Jocko and his team was, you better be able to disconnect from those things because it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Right? But if that emotional communication that you disconnected from in that moment isn't properly integrated at some point down the line, that's PTSD, that's trauma.
100%, brother.
You follow me?
I love that.
So there's utility value in disconnecting from emotional communication. One of the individuals on the planet that leverage disconnection is children. When children are in environments that they have no control over and there's not a place for them to be their authentic self and express themselves, it's like they can't be themselves. They have to disconnect from themselves in order to survive. Right? Now, that's really what childhood trauma is. It's the disconnection from self. We lose the ability to be aware of ourselves. We lose our gut instinct. We lose our intuition because we've disconnected because we had to. Right? Now, obviously, this is a major rabbit hole here.
This is a good one.
But that's what I mean by when we look at stress as something that's here to help us. Emotions, overwhelm, anxiety. It's a communication. Hey, we need to pay attention. Anxiety literally says, hey, it's time to pay attention. Like, we're in an environment we've never been in. We need to pay attention. Instead of shutting that off, we need to learn how to integrate the communication. Right? The goal isn't to, in my opinion, the goal of life is not to just be joyful, happy, and peaceful. That's not the goal. The emotional communication is not the goal. Emotion is the navigation system, right? Like when you get in your car and you have a navigation system, what do you put in there? The destination. Okay, where do I want to go in life? What's important to me? What's meaningful? What's the purpose here? I'm going to put in that destination. My emotions will tell me if I'm on track or not. I don't put into my navigation system, my car, just talk nice to me. Just tell me that I'm always making the right turn. Can you just please just be nice? Like, don't tell me I'm making the wrong turn.
I need
Do you see what I'm saying?
I need the United Kingdom voice. I want that nice, lovely voice telling me which way to go. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to go here, and we have this incredibly sophisticated communication system that's saying, hey, man, you're off track of who you want to be and what's important to you. Pay attention. That's why you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, or you feel sad, or you feel guilt or shame. These things in so many environments are healthy. Where it becomes a problem is when this communication happened a long time in our past. We weren't in a place to integrate it properly. And so that communication system is still trying to communicate the thing to us when we're 40 that we never integrated when we were 5.
Yeah. I love this. Okay, this is so powerful. I mean, and this is just the tip of what the iceberg of the book, of the part about mindset. But really what you just said, I mean, a couple of things I think you just really did well there with just stress is, one, there's a reframe. You're reframing it, and you're taking that, detaching from the emotion, seeing clearly really what's going on here, what's the problem. And then I love what you said about putting in those coordinates, because then it's like, where do I want to go? What is the purpose? What's the vision? What's the mission that I want to accomplish? Oh, I'm nervous about, let's say, giving a speech, because everyone's the most nervous thing. But what's the mission? The mission is to have so much impact and just create, you know, to just make people, like this podcast is just, what's the mission? The mission is just to deliver so much impact and value that people are going to walk away going, wow, I can't wait to learn more. I just got healed by hearing Matt talk. Like, I love using that. That's so powerful. Yeah. And then if you had to, I guess you could incorporate box spring and all that other stuff, but what a better way.
Yeah, no, there's a place for all that stuff. Those are useful techniques, man.
Yeah. So good, man. Brother, I got so much more to ask you. But this will be part 1, I think, of many, and I can't wait to have you back on. And we'll do some more. We'll do some more stuff. Before, we're not even gonna have time for the lightning round questions, which is totally fine. But I do want you to just kind of end and just kind of just let everybody know, like, where they can connect with you, where can they learn more about you, and then of course, guys, go out and pick up the book Health to Vitality. It's everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all that good stuff. But yeah, Matt, let everybody know where they can connect with you and learn more about what you're up to.
Yeah. Like I said, MatthewLaBosco.com is always a great place to go. HealthToVitality.com is where you'll get the books and some of the courses I have. But honestly, in the new year, there'll be a Health to Vitality app, which will have a lot of free content. So the other thing about my book is it comes with all this free content. There's 8 chapter summary videos, there's resources, there's a power regions program in the book, which literally teaches you how to keep your power regions healthy. Like, it's all, for $10 you get all of that if you buy the paperback, 99 cents if you get the Kindle. So there's a ton of stuff that's just out into the space, and the app will have all that stuff. And yes, there's obviously going to be opportunity to take some courses inside of the movement stuff and the systemic stuff and the mindset stuff for sure. But those are the 2 best places to find me.
Amazing, brother. So grateful to have you come on the show. And we'll definitely do a round 2. Maybe we'll even do something at the top of the year when the app
That'd
gets
be
released,
amazing.
and we can talk more about
dude.
that. Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Amazing stuff, dude. Love you, brother. And yeah, we'll connect pretty soon.
Thanks, Joel.